Welcome, everyone, to this forum on how to respond to hard things, part one. We have so much to go over and to discuss. We're doing this in two parts at least. So I'll turn it over to Reverend Sara for our chalice lighting words and welcome.
Good morning or afternoon now. So our chalice lighting words for today are by Reverend Molly Brewer. My beloved people, I cannot pretend, and so I will not tell you that everything is okay right now, that there is no reason to be angry, that you must be optimistic or at peace. I cannot pretend these things, and so I won't tell them to you. But now our chalice is lit. And so all I ask in this moment is that we remember the words of Rebecca Parker. There is a love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all. By the light of our chalice, let us rest in this love. So welcome to this forum. A few things to know. We are streaming on Zoom and on YouTube, and this forum is being recorded. And this is part one of a two-part forum. The second part will be on March 15th. I'm Reverend Sara. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Community and Faith Development. And today's forum is one with both me and Reverend Mary about how to respond to hard things. So I will pass it back over to Reverend Mary.
Thank you all for gathering. I'm Reverend Mary, and I use she, her pronouns. Thank you for being with us virtually today, Sara. So I'm going to start with a story. And this is a story from the Buddhist tradition. And it tells of the Buddha telling a story about a monk who was shot by an arrow by accident. Was in the forest, there was a hunter, the arrow went into the monk's leg. And what the monk did is grabbed the arrow and tried to pull it out and jostled with it and caused even more pain. And in the Buddhist story, the first arrow is the unavoidable pain of life. We encounter pain because we're human. And then the Buddha spoke of a second arrow, and that's the pain that we cause ourselves, as when the monk grabbed the arrow and tried to pull it out, causing even more pain for himself. And so the Buddha taught about the unavoidable physical pain of being human. And now we add to that because we are humans interconnected with each other, we also have unavoidable emotional pain. We feel the pain of others. And that is the first arrow, the arrow of life. So that's all the hard things. We all know what those are. The trauma that we have, the physical pain that we might experience from an accident or from aging in a culture that does not support aging or disability. It is the emotional pain that we might feel of a sense that we don't belong, or that comes with our genetics, or any number of things that we might experience. And it is accompanied by grief and loss and disappointment. In some models, this is what's called clean pain. This is the pain that we experience from being humans, the first arrow. And then is the second arrow. Those are the things that we cause ourselves, we throw at ourselves. And this is things like we ruminate, we rehash those events over and over again, unable to let them go. We might write an angry email to someone in the middle of the night. We might even send it. It might be feeling like we're responsible for something when we're not. It could mean feeling flooded or overwhelmed or drained, getting sucked into conflicts that really aren't ours. And these are the stresses and upsets that come from the second arrows. Another part of the second arrow is that there are systemic challenges that make the pain even harder. So, for example, if someone suffers an accident, a first arrow, unavoidable physical pain, in our medical system, we don't have guaranteed medical care. And so if they can't seek medical care, that's a second arrow that is thrown by our society that says, you're on your own when it comes to medical care, right? At least if you're under 65 and not disabled. So there's the second arrows that we do to ourselves. There's the second arrows that we create as a culture, and they cause more pain. The kinds of things that we do when we react to the first arrow, the unavoidable pain that causes more pain, is things like unawareness and denial. That's not really so bad, minimizing that didn't happen, like the folks who say the Holocaust didn't happen, the Holocaust deniers. Those are the unawareness and denial. There's spiritual bypass. Reverend Sara talked about that in her sermon this morning, the spiritual bypass of using religion or spirituality to minimize, deny, avoid pain. And in response to hard things that happen, what spiritual bypass sounds like is when people say things like, don't worry, she's in heaven now, or we're never given any more than we can handle, or everything happens for a reason. That's spiritual bypass. It's a requirement of positivity, of avoidance, of, well, you just need to forgive the person, requiring or asking of that prematurely, rationalization. And we know that when we're with people who are using those methods to avoid their own pain, so that they're not feeling our pain, those folks are hard to be with. They're not comforting, they're not often helpful. And so they're causing more pain by trying to avoid their own. So what we know from the work of Resmaa Menakem and others is that hurt people hurt people. When we're hurting, we hurt others. And healing people heal people. So what we hope to do with these two forums, and perhaps more, is to offer ways that we can take care of ourselves, calm ourselves, take care of our first arrows and second arrows, so that we can be with the pain of others in a way that is helpful to them. So we're going to talk a lot about calming ourselves, knowing ourselves, handling our own nervous systems, so that we can then be with others. So Reverend Sara, can I hand it back to you for some discussion of safety?
Yes. So one learning that has been very important to me is about how self-awareness and self-regulation relates to safety in relationship, including relationship with yourself. So this graphic here shows levels of unsafe people, with the most unsafe down at the bottom and the most safe at the top. This can also be safety of how you treat yourself. So it's not just in relationship. And not really going to address the bottom, the least safe. These are, as you can see here, ruthless and evil, psychopath, or enjoyment from being destructive, or selfish, uncaring, low-level narcissism. That's beyond the scope of our talk today. But most people, by default, are in the middle here. We fall unaware, little introspection, or aware but lacking internal brakes. And both of those can still be pretty unsafe. They can lead to a lot of those second arrows in how we treat ourselves or others. So moving up in safety is to be increasing your awareness and your internal brakes. So if we go to the next slide, Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist and author, is widely quoted. This is probably the most famous quote. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So that space varies a lot. That space might be hardly there at all if we are very activated, if we don't have those internal brakes to slow down our nervous system, in which case there's not a lot of power to choose our response. So the goal of self-awareness and self-regulation is to increase that space, to extend the pause between stimulus and response so that we can more truly be the people we want to be rather than the people that we reactively act like. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So it's becoming more and more known that our brains are multifaceted, and we will move from certain parts of our brains and bodies being in charge to other parts of our brain and body being in charge over our lifespan, and over any particular time where we get activated or we self-regulate. So self-awareness is working with our executive brain while we're calm. That's when our executive functioning brain can really be the observer, the witness of who we are and how we are reacting. And this is something to note that it is over lifespan. So self-awareness is something that grows with time. We talk about adolescence as having low executive functioning. This part of the brain isn't thought to be fully mature until you're 25. Actuary tables for car insurance say that you become a safer driver at that age, and so they charge less because this part of the brain is more in charge. And so self-awareness can increase, but it also can increase with practice. So practices like meditation and other practices also seem to increase our ability to have our executive brain be in charge. Self-regulation is working with the other parts of the brain and the body, the nervous system. So self-regulation is working with our survival brain and body when it's activated. And we might notice that we're in survival brain when our pulse increases, our breathing gets more rapid. It's that fight, flight, freeze kind of place. But it happens a lot, not just because our bodies overreact. We don't need to see a tiger to go into this part of our brain and body. This could be because we're nervous about speaking in public, or it could be because somebody just said something that activated and reminded you of a past trauma. This part of our body is where we need the internal brakes. So being aware of what your activations are is great. You might know that you are likely to get upset in crowds, but being able to self-regulate so that you can work through the tools to stay calm in a crowd, that's self-regulation. And sometimes we are aware, but still not able to regulate. So these two things need to go together. And now you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So Rick Hansen has some models about working to increase the pause and ways to do this work of self-awareness and self-regulation. He recommends that we experience our experiences, just experience them, witness them. Don't judge, don't do anything but witness and experience. And that we begin to identify and release and soothe and heal unhelpful internal messages and urges. And then expand our tools around helpful thoughts, habits, and messages. So the metaphor is the mind is like a garden. We can witness the garden, we can pull the weeds, and we can plant new flowers. Let be, let go, let in. I find that a helpful metaphor. And now I'm going to pass it back to Reverend Mary for another helpful metaphor.
So before we go to the next model and metaphor, I just want to pause for a moment to see if there's any questions or comments at this point. Anything to be said or asked? And Carmen, is there anybody online who's wanting to check in? Okay. So the next model that might be helpful is called psychological ring theory. And this is from two psychologists, Susan Silk and Barry Goldman. So this model puts the person in crisis in the center, right? We've talked about who's in the center and who's on the margins. This puts the person in crisis at the center. And the circles that move out from that person are circles of closeness to that person. So we have a person in crisis in the center. We have their friends and family, the people closest to them next. We have their community, their neighbors, their faith community next, coworkers, and then we move out from there, right? And so the idea of this model of ring theory is that support should go in to the circles, through the circles, and complaining should go out. That's the model. So what that looks like is support should come in. And ideally, support comes into a person in crisis from all of the places, from the nation, from the community, from the faith community, from the neighbors, the friends, everyone who surrounds that person, so that as they're moving through their crisis, they're feeling supported. So support comes in. So outward is recognizing that we complain, we vent, we need to say stuff, and we can find places to do that that are not directed at the person in crisis, because they don't need to hear it, right? So let's say you have a family member who smoked for 50 years and they get lung cancer. It's an awful thing, right? It's a first arrow, it's a tragedy. There's an unavoidable pain. You might have a reaction like, they smoked for 50 years, how could they do that, right? And you can be mad and you can need to vent. You can vent to other people. I mean, it's a normal response. That might be a response you have. Vent to other people. You don't need to vent to the person who just got a really bad diagnosis, right? So support goes in, complaining, venting, sharing your feelings goes out. Now, this is really important for all of us because we also have our own stuff, right? And so a person in crisis might be experiencing something that triggers for us our own trauma, our own hard things that we are going to want to handle and deal with and work with, but not with the person in crisis. We need to go elsewhere in our circles, our friends and family and supports, in order to be able to name what is bothering us, what has been triggered for us, before we can engage with this person who is in crisis and in a crisis that has triggered us. So the rule in this model is never dump on someone in a smaller ring than you. Never dump on someone in a smaller ring than you. Complaining goes out, support goes in. Pretty simple model, maybe not always easy to use. And it requires that spaciousness that Reverend Sara talked about, being able to pause, literally pause long enough to say, whew, where am I in the circles? How am I feeling right now? What do I need so that I can respond well to whatever is happening in front of me? Any questions about that or anything that comes to mind, any examples that you can think of? I'll be right there.
Please wait for a microphone. We'll get it to you in 1 second.
This way everybody can hear you.
My question is this: if you do at your but somebody who smoked for years, I don't care.
Hold the microphone down.
Okay, now can everybody hear me now? Okay, good. If you do encounter that, what words can you use? Because this is a terrible diagnosis. I mean, I'm just using that as an example. There's probably other things too. But I don't ever know what to say. I want to offer them comfort, but how much comfort can I offer them? Do you know what I mean? So I don't know.
What a great question. And what I would say to that is, and I will say the pastoral care team members and I talk about this all the time, right? So how do you be with someone who is in pain? So we'll talk about some concrete things that we can do and say. One of the things, there's a couple things I would say to keep in mind. One is the person might not be ready for comfort. They may be pissed as all get out, right? That they've got this diagnosis. And so if you're offering comfort and they're mad, it might not be a good match. So some of it is to just pay attention to the person who is in front of you and where are they. If you're calm enough and able to do that, what is it that they might be needing? Because they might just need to rage for a while. And if you comfort them, what you're telling them is, I can't handle your rage, you need to calm down, right? So the guidance that I give to pastoral care members is, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to say anything. Be fully present. Listen and watch the person. Watch what they're doing, watch what they're saying, listen to what they're saying, and be with whatever is happening in front of you. Does that make some sense? Yeah. I mean, we're a people of words, right? And we think we need to say something, and if we say just the right thing, don't need to say anything.
What if in the listening you hear the person raging away and then threatening to do harm to themselves or someone else?
Right, so that could be a whole nother topic. And I'll say the pastoral care team and I are meeting on Saturday in a retreat. We do that once a year. And that's exactly the topic that we're going to spend a half a day talking about, Jill. So the short answer to that is get some help, right? Ask for some help of how to deal with that. And if this is really a topic that you all think is important, we can certainly talk about that in some depth. That isn't a common thing. It can happen. It's not a common thing. And people who, I guess the other thing I'll say is people who have received a diagnosis of some kind, who are struggling with facing their mortality all of a sudden, they're going to talk about death. That doesn't mean that they're going to hurt themselves. They just need to talk about death. And if we are able to be with them as they talk about their mortality and their death, that's great. And if we're not, then we need to know that because it triggers our own, right? And so if we're not able to be in that space with that person, then don't be and help them find someone who can be. Does that make some sense for now? Reverend Sara, do you want to weigh in? I saw your hand, Beth. Do you want to weigh in on anything here?
Yes, I actually would love to add to that. That question reminded me that this last week I was working with someone who really just wanted to be heard and really explicitly said, "Oh, just thank you so much for hearing me." So the when someone is raging away and you don't know what to say, just let them and just say, "I hear you. I hear you." That is so comforting and actually really rare. So if we don't know what to say, awesome. That means we're leaving more room for the other person.
Am I, okay, there we are. A couple things. You know, the ring, working with the ring requires that as we do that, we grow in our own self-awareness. And so I think that that has so many wonderful implications. If you know, because we're not going to be perfect at these kinds of things. We will grow as we use them. And then in reference to Reverend Sarah's comment, I'm doing some peer counseling at Peer Olympia. And the whole idea of being heard, I am so blown away by people's need for that. I have 2 clients that from the moment they hit the door until the hour is up, they just talk. And that's what I'm there for. And if I have something to interject, I just do the time and then sign and we talk. But that is just more important than I think we could ever realize. So that's it.
So, so someone that's just recently gone through a crisis with my son, what's been helpful to me is if people can just hear me and not try to fix me or fix the issue. Because what I hear when people try to fix it is that I'm not handling it okay.
What a gift it is to be heard, to be able to speak and to be heard. And if you think about that, we want that in our lives and the people who are around us in the circles that are most immediate around us, including in our faith community. And one of the things I notice right now that just accentuates the importance of that is that we have a national government that isn't listening, right? Doesn't care what people are saying. And so in that context in particular, we have to be extra vigilant and extra careful with each other to make sure that we can hear each other, because there are lots of folks who are being dismissed, ignored, oppressed, stomped on right now. So the listening becomes even more important.
Hey, so just going to the topic about how you tell the difference between rage that is directed towards your idea of someone, symbolized as that someone. So you go into your state of mind that you need to release your emotions however you need to, and you have that understanding that you're not trying to hurt someone per se, you're just taking a symbol of them and doing what you feel you need to heal yourself on the inside. But at the same time, if it works and it turns out that the person receives what you had for them, you have to be grateful and thankful for that it worked. So if it's not going to have that result for you, that it's like taking an insect out of a person's home and letting it go out to live versus squashing the insect on the kitchen floor, you know? So that's like one level, one tier of difference between humanity and the next up and the next below, according to them being like the middle of an hourglass. So that's real important to be able to understand and release your emotions whenever you need to, but in a way that is beneficial at the same time. That's the best words I have.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're talking about the difference between actions and words that are in service of healing and actions and words that are in service of harm, right? And discerning between those. Anything else, Shyler?
I just wanted to add a bit about that clean paint and dirty paint idea. I guess since it's Black History Month, that model is from a person of color, Resme Manikam, I believe is their name. And they also write a lot about the idea of dignity. And I haven't really studied their stuff a lot, but from what I've seen is that, like, if I'm bawling, if I'm wailing, that's not very dignified, but it may be necessary. So there's no need to get involved with undignified behavior, whether that's like raging or real pain, that's so maybe it's just a different way to think about this. The being heard kind of thing, like, okay, well, I'm not going to get involved in this undignified behavior. I'm just going to let it happen, which, yeah, maybe the word undignified isn't quite the best here, but that particular work is, targeted at people who want to change themselves and become better with their pain. So when they are getting angry or they are bawling at things, they're getting triggered, the person can try to call on their dignity, but from the outside perspective, it can be looked at as, well, that's not them at their most dignified, so I'm not going to try to get involved in that.
Thank you, Shyler. And, if you think about that in the context of listening and being with people, when we can be with people when they are at their most vulnerable and undignified, what a gift that is. I can think of nurses do this all the time, right? I see James nodding there, retired nurse. Nurses do this all the time. They're with us when we're doing all the bodily functions, right? And it's not very dignified, and yet here we are being human together. Yeah, Carbon.
Sarah wants to share.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, so I wanted to circle back there. That's often when people are acting in ways that are very undignified, it's also that they've lost their internal brakes. And so we're back to regulation again. If we're talking about, raging, weeping, a lot of times this is the biological need of the body to respond to all of that nervous system energy. And one thing to remember is that self-regulation is great, and we can also co-regulate with people. So if a person is in a place where they're not self-regulating, we can help by attending to our own regulation. And this can look like things like breathing very intentionally. If you stay present with a person who is having trouble breathing and you are able to slow your own breathing, you don't have to tell them, hey, breathe with me, slow down your breathing. You just breathe nice and slow and deep. And it actually does help people start to regulate their breathing, their heart rate off of yours. So the being with people in different states, we can still tend to our own self-awareness, self-regulation, and it ripples out. We're very relational beings.
I think we're going to have a question. So how about this one, Carbon? I'm making Carbon work hard for the sound today. So a couple things to add. Just for an example, when I'm accompanying a family working on a memorial service or a celebration of life, often folks will say to me, I'm so afraid I'm going to cry. And I have two responses to that. One is permission giving. It's a memorial service. Cry. If you can't cry at church at a memorial service, where can you cry? And the second is, we will all be there with you. I will be there. I will stand with you. I'll put my hand on your shoulder. I will be there with you, and so will everyone who's there. So there's this, I think there's this sense of permission giving. First of all, it's okay, and second of all, you're not alone in this.
I would like to share that, first of all, the model of support in and what was the outward one? Complaining outward. That's very important, but self-awareness, if I'm with somebody and they're expressing grief or fear or anger, there's a message in me that, the more I hurt with it, the more I understand its significance. That's compassion, that's feeling with. It's up to me to be in control of my awareness in that regard and keep listening. And my own discomfort is the model for me that maybe I'm getting somewhere here. You know, I'm listening. This hurts. I can go from there. I worked in hospice, and more than once, I've cried with families. I was still functioning, but it's okay to let tears flow, even when you're listening.
Thank you, James. I'll say one more thing before I turn it back to Reverend Sara. This is why support groups are so important, the ring model, because, for example, the caregiver grief support group that Reverend Carol McKinley and Deborah Dorman lead at OUC, the folks in that group have someone they're caring for, that person in the middle, or someone they've cared for who they're grieving. They might have feelings about how hard it is to be a caregiver. The person they're caring for doesn't need to hear that, but the support group of people around them can. And not only hear it, but relate. So that's why the support we create around us and that we create in our faith community is so important. Reverend Sara, can I turn it back to you then?
Yes. So I'm going to talk about some concrete steps and practices that we can take for self-care and healing. And then part 2 of this forum will go into even more concrete ways to help other people and ourselves. But for today, we're going to talk about another Rick Hansen concept. And this is the 3 things that you can do while being with pain. The first is to keep a warm heart, not a calm or perfect heart, but a warm heart. So this looks like letting the pain of the other person or your own pain wash through you without resisting it, and opening your heart to find compassion, the sincere wish that no being should suffer. And let that compassion lift and fuel you to bear the pain. This is the first step. We're not saying it's the easiest step. Keeping a warm heart can be very challenging. And this is also why practices help build your capacity. So that we'll talk about spiritual practices in a bit, but any practice that you find helps with grounding and expanding your experience of compassion can help you have greater capacity to keep a warm heart in times of hard things and of pain. The second thing that you can do is to do what you can, and then to know that you have done it. Let that bring you a feeling of peace. And do what you can is an important part of this. You'll also have to face your limitations. None of us can do what we can't, and that's okay. Facing the facts of limitations is another source of peace. What is mine to do? What is not mine to do? Do what you can. And in those times, like with the question earlier, what do I do if this is beyond my scope of capacity? You don't have to do it all. Reach out for help when it is more than you can do. others may have other capacities to help. The third thing that you can do as you are being with pain and hard things is distancing and big picture. So this is the zooming out to get the bigger picture. So whatever the pain happens to be, it may be due to something specific. It could be due to illness, to depression, to a specific event that has just happened, a relationship, but it's also made up of many, many, many parts that are a vast web of causes. Everyone is a very complicated mix of past experiences, of their own emotional makeup and personality, the sensations that they have, the thoughts that they have, their own history, even their DNA. And so while the pain is specific, it's also very complicated and has a whole bunch of causes. So when you can recognize that truth, that this is actually very big and complex, that also can be strangely calming. You still care about the other person and you do what you can, but this is not a singular thing for you to fix. You can care about your own pain and do what you can, but this is not a singular thing for you to fix. Pulling the arrow out is not going to fix the wound. Recognizing that this is complicated and you're just doing what you can lets you hold this pain and this hard thing in a more peaceful way. It's a recognition of the wholeness of it. The more you can do that, the more that you can settle down your neural networks and the other person's through co-regulation as well. So these three things, keeping a warm heart, doing what you can, and seeing the big picture, are a concrete set of tools to put in your toolbox for when you need to face pain and hard things in the future. And then if I could have the next slide. So I said that practices help you expand your capacity. And this is where we at OUC are trying to collect things, and we are a community of practice and practices. No practice is perfect for everyone, but these are some of the practices that can expand your capacity for keeping that warm heart, your capacity for self-awareness, your capacity for self-regulation, your capacity for keeping directionality in the rings, all of your capacities. And so some of the practices that you might engage with: worship. Worship actually is a great way to expand your capacity to be with pain and hard things. Communal worship, singing in the choir, spiritual practices, all of that. Another practical resource is counseling, spiritual direction, small group ministry, and trusted, safe people that you can talk to about your pain and do your own healing work. Healing people heal people, hurt people hurt people. So moving in your own journey of healing, however you need to do that, expands your capacity to also aid in the healing of others. And then there are all sorts of spiritual practices, including nature. And so again, no practice is perfect for everyone. But Side with Love has very helpfully gathered up a wonderful resource of many, many practices, poems, prayers, videos to help with these hard times that we're in. And we've linked that on the OUC website. So you can find it linked from there. Please explore that resource that Side with Love, a program of the Unitarian Universalist Association, has put together for us. If you don't find anything in that wonderful list, there are other things out there. Yoga, meditation, classes, groups, and videos are available to us. We have the Buddhist Sangha that meets at OUC on Thursday evenings. There are also many online meditation groups offered probably almost at any hour of the day, because you could find them from around the world that you might be able to join. So if you are an insomniac, maybe there's a meditation group for you in the middle of the night. But there are also meditation videos that are very helpful. And I personally, I have a go-to yoga video that I go back to all the time. It's Yoga with Adrienne has a video, Yoga for Anxiety, and also one for, I think, yoga for bringing down your cortisol. And both of those are great if you're just getting worked up and need to bring the cortisol levels down. Nature is also a wonderful restoring spiritual practice and can expand our capacity for holding and for seeing the big picture. So go outside and touch some grass, or pet one of your pets. Tend to a house plant if you can't get outside. But nature does do wonderful things to our bodies, brains, and spirits. So utilize that resource to expand your capacity. And then, because we are in such times as we are, Reverend Mary and I have begun including an extra element in the weekly Spark that we send out on Thursdays, where we are including videos that we're making directly to address practices to help us cope with these times. So you can see those once a week. And if you want to look back through older Sparks, they are all posted on the OUC website as well. So those are some of the practical resources that we are suggesting that you utilize. And we can take the slides down and ask if you have any questions, comments, or anything you would add to that list for others that you find a helpful practice.
I keep thinking a meditation has definitely given me more space. So that's what works for me. And what sometimes gets in the way of that space is being aware that I'm having a judgment about what's going on with somebody. And that's just like a little reminder to go, okay, don't say anything yet. You know, it's like the judgment, they don't need to hear it. And the judgment is more about me than about them, you know, it's all that kind of stuff. I use it as really consciously as a reminder to stay in that space and not respond right away.
One other practice that's happening at OUC that I'll mention is the Tuesday morning NIA class, N-I-A. NIA is a spirituality-based movement. Christy Woodford, who attends OUC, teaches NIA. I met Christy at the Y, teaching a class there, and she said, can I bring it to OUC? So that group meets on Tuesday mornings. I think it's 9 o'clock. You'll find it on the calendar. It's in the weekly update. And it's a lovely circle. Has anybody here attended the NIA class? I'm not going to remember that, Lee. Sorry, I don't. But if you Google NIA, you'll find it. It's neuro something is the N, but Yeah, it's really a way to integrate body, mind, and spirit, and it's a lovely practice.
Let's pitch it back to Sarah.
So I attend the NIA class on Tuesday mornings. Love it. It is wonderful. And it is a great way to release some tension and regulate the body, the brain, and the spirit. Highly recommend.
Any other practices to mention that folks want to share? Yeah, Dot.
Well, I don't know if this will work for everybody, but I use exercise. I find that if I get out there and get my blood flowing, I feel a lot better afterward.
When the sun came out just now, I felt much happier.
Nothing like sunshine.
I have trouble waking up in the morning, becoming aware of things. I have to have my coffee first. There's a lot of reasons for that. But anyway, my cure sometimes is I just go outside, even if it's bad weather. I just go stand on the back porch and I act goofy. I like talk to the birds. He's heard me do it. Talk to the birds, sing a song, you know, make up words to something. You know, I just stand out there, breathe the cold air, and just act goofy. And that brings me back to a center that I'm comfortable with, from one that's kind of like zombied.
And Maureen, you mentioned singing a song. For some of us, music is a spiritual practice, singing. And I have songs that are my go-to songs, depending on how I'm feeling. And when I visit people in the hospital or at the bedside, I sing to them. I might not have words, but they can feel and hear my presence and my music. The other thing that singing does is it helps you breathe. And you can co-regulate with someone when you're singing with them.
Well, I'm open to my dog influencing me. He knows when I need a break. And so he'll actually come to me and ask for different things. And sometimes it's, you got to play with me.
Play, what a good practice. Carbon?
So the mention of coffee made me want to share a practice that was important when I was a mother of young children. And someone recommended to me the Mr. Coffee meditation practice, that the time it takes for your coffee machine to brew your coffee can be your meditation time. And as the smell increases, and if you have a loud coffee maker, it's gurgling away, that's the timer to breathe in the aroma and let it begin to wake you up. And then imagine what that coffee is going to feel like as it hits your system, and then breathe as the aroma increases. And it was more helpful than any timer app could possibly be for a little morning meditation with the coffee maker.
I'll mention one other thing before we close to extinguish the chalice, and that's the idea of self-care and community care. We need both of those things, right? We can do all the self-care in the world, and when we're in toxic systems, we're still not okay. And so, I mean, Reverend Sara's sermon this morning was all about community care, right? And combating the individualism of, well, if you just take care of yourself, then you'll be fine. And in a toxic system, that just doesn't work. So we'll talk more about that as well. And community care is what we can do together as a faith community for each other. So thank you so very much for your engagement and your questions and your pondering and your wondering. We'll continue on March 15th with some more practical ways to be together through hard times and to help each other hold our pain. Reverend Sara, thank you for being with us online. Is there anything else you want to add before we extinguish the chalice?
Just gratitude again for this community of care, all the ways that we take care of each other. Thank you all for being part of it.
And so we'll extinguish our chalice with the words of Eric Walker Rickstrom. The purpose of this community, of any church, temple, zendo, or mosque, is to help its people grow. We do this through encounters with the unknown, in ourselves, in one another, in the other, whoever that might be for us, however hard that might be, because these encounters are our gifts to each other. So may you go forth from here, not who you were, but who you could be. So may we all. Thank you so much, everyone.